So on Sunday, for the first time, I went to my first Greek Orthodox service. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to share with you the things that I've learned, what my experience was actually like, much like I did with the start at my first time at church. And also, I've just came off of a Orthodox study session. So this was online, and I'm going to show you all of the notes I've got, everything that I learned. And this is a new step for me, and I see this channel as a progressive channel in the sense that where I grow, I want to show you the things and how I'm growing, and perhaps that could help you grow on your journey. Perhaps you could ask me a question and I can answer that, and we all grow together, if that makes sense. So it's a collaborative channel. But first, let's go back to the start. I want to explain why is it that, what drove me to go towards an Orthodox service, because when I went there was lots of talking and lots of community afterwards, and that was the one thing that came up. So for me, the where I'm at in my faith, and essentially the reason why I turned to faith in the first place, was this thirst, this deep requirement for structure and rigor. I'm young in terms of my life, right? So I'm 26, and I think that I need a purpose, I need a vision, and maybe perhaps it's how I grew up, but the one thing that I just absolutely adore and I require so much is structure. Things to be done at the same time, things to be done in a certain way, having a process, a yes to this and a no to that, and having such a defined structure so that I can just follow that and know that I'm making steps in the right direction, know that I am doing the right thing. And in and amongst that, like, how does that make sense in my journey as a Christian? What I found initially, and some of this came sometimes from my own judgment, so I guess there's work to be done on that, but I found that with going to the current service that I was a Church of England, it has a big place in my heart. I really learned a lot. I was baptised there. I still go to that service to this day. But something I guess I just was still seeking for more structure, more rigor, more of a just an iron sharpens iron type of service, if that makes sense. More stricter, like being back at school, if that makes sense. And again, I'm really sort of speaking from my heart, and this pull towards Orthodox and different denominations, going towards an Orthodox service just seemed to tick those boxes, if that makes sense. So that is you all caught up. Maybe there's you guys in the comments that maybe there's different routes to go down, or maybe you can understand why I've said those things. So then we go to the Orthodox service. This was a Greek Orthodox service. I understand there's Russian Orthodox as well, but I went to a Greek Orthodox service, and when I went in, it was a much smaller building. So the building in and of itself was much different to what I've been in so far. I've been to the churches in Rome, in Italy, and then obviously the Church of England that I go to. These are much grander buildings, big stained glass windows, lots and lots of space. Some of them have pews in terms of the Catholic services that I've been to, but this one was a lot different. This was a much more smaller, intimate building. There was no big stained glass windows. It was really quite a plain and simple building, if that makes sense. And when you go in, you're greeted, and then you sort of walk, and then there's like a cross at the front, similar to how a Catholic service would be structured. There's not too much of a difference, really, at least the Catholic services that I've been to. And this was a Greek service, so one of the biggest call outs straight away was the fact that the service was split into Greek and English. So there was a lot of the service that I point blank couldn't understand. Now, I would be lying if I said to you that as soon as I walked through the door, something magical happened, because that's not the truth whatsoever. What actually happened when I walked in was I felt really out of place. Not that I didn't feel welcome, but I felt very, very alien because I was speaking a literal different language. I speak languages, but I don't speak Greek. So it took me a long time to actually understand what was going on. And I was beginning to think, what have I walked into? This feels a bit weird. It doesn't feel right. It wasn't what I was expecting. And I was constantly trying to follow along with the service order, and it just wasn't working whatsoever. And this was about 20 minutes in that I really started to get into it. And here's the first part that made this service so different, that brought me into my next stage of development. In order for me to understand that service, I had to let go. I had to let go of the piece of paper. I had to let go of judgment. I had to let go of this need to understand things and think too deep. I just simply had to be there. I just simply had to show up and go to church. And that was a key message in the study session I've just came off of. We tend to overthink things. We tend to get caught up in these temporal things of the flesh, right? But part of the Orthodox way is just simply go to church, be in a community, and follow the commandments. So for me to understand that service, I simply had to just let go. And what that meant was I put the piece of paper down and I just looked at the front and I just let go. And then as soon as I let go, that was then when I began to understand things. I actually started to experience the service and understand what was being said. Even in the Greek aspect, I could still sometimes get a gist of what was said. I could get a feel. In terms of the actual service itself, there was an immense amount of adoration. And when I mean adoration for the Lord. I mean putting focus on the Lord. For example, where I go to, the Church of England service, there's like a big screen, and that screen will essentially tell you what to say. And that again does have its pros and cons. For the people that can't see, can't follow along, that makes sense. But in the Orthodox service, there was no screen, and what we're looking at is Christ. We're looking at the cross, which was just a beautiful thing. But here's where it gets interesting. The father or the priest, again, I'm not too clued up on the terms yet, but he wasn't actually facing us in the service. He was facing away from us, so he too was facing Christ. And what I took from that was that, again, it's more on the adoration. The focus was on Christ, which I just found was a really special thing. I think sometimes we can be at church passively, and that was just, again, the more that I let go, I was in, I was in the presence of God. My focus was on God, so that was really special. Another thing was the fact that we were stood up for the service for like 90% of the time. There was only a small section, about a third of the way in, where we sat down for a couple of minutes, and I've started to study the Orthodox way and why the service is structured the way it is. And I absolutely love this. You'll know this from if you watch my videos consistently. I'm a big advocate for work, and the Bible is a big advocate of work and labour. And what the Orthodox way believes in terms of the service is that when you stand up, you believe that the service is a way of work, a way of honouring God. So by you standing, it's uncomfortable, it's painful, you want to sit down, but you're having to work for it. You're working through your faith. You're not just going there to sit down and be passive with it. You're standing up, and you're standing up straight as well. Because when you see all the other guys standing up, and you sort of see the father there and the priest there, and you sort of don't want to let them down, you want to represent God. You're not slouching, you're not slacking. It gets hard and you do want to sit down, but you still do it. And I think there's a message in there through life in and of itself of just still standing, and you have to put trust in the Lord. Again, when I let go and actually started to think, right, let me just put my focus on the cross. Let me just listen to what's saying. All of a sudden, I forgot about how tired I was. I forgot about how my knees hurt and my feet hurt. So again, it taught me to let go on where my focus should be. And then we get to the final stage. There's more that I could talk about, but this section really means a lot to me. And this part is purely the reason why I'm very confident that Orthodox is going to become a bigger part of my life. And that is the community. So one of the messages for tonight was that there is, I can't even remember the message, but you have to go to church in order to find communion. It's communion between you and God. And so the idea of going to church is that you are surrounded by other people, you can make better choices. Going to church is a big part of the Orthodox way of life and being an Orthodox Christian, and that is just, maybe it's not something I have a full answer on, but it's something at this point I can absolutely get behind. It's finding that community, and that is the real special part of this. When the service on Sunday was over, we all just got together and spoke, and not like in a catching up. Sometimes where I currently go, it's more like a catch up, like a mother's meet at times, I guess, which I absolutely love. I've met some incredible people in the current service that I go to, and I still go there now, right? But again, just a call out from this current service was that we all got together, and it was like we was introducing one another. For example, the bread. So at an Orthodox service, you can't take communion if you haven't been baptized in the Orthodox service. That's fine. At the end though, we all line up and we all take a piece of the bread, and the priest talks to you like an individual. Really, again, really special. It was, he could tell I was new. He asked if it was my first time there, just again speaking to me. And this community aspect was just, it was beautiful, and it was childlike. That was a word that really came up and struck with me. So we all talk. I met two incredible people, two good friends. I hope that I see them on the channel more. There was so much that we learned. And then at the end, we do this other bit. So by this time, a lot of people have left. For an extra 10-15 minutes, the priest sat us down in the church, but it was much more intimate. We all sort of like gathered round and talked, and he just spoke to us. He just taught us and taught and taught. He taught us about faith in works. He taught us about the importance of hospitality and how we use hospitality to honour our faith in works. He taught us about Abraham. So Abraham was obviously a very prominent figure in the Old Testament, and there's a story that he was telling me about, in the sense that Abraham would come out of his tent in the morning and he wouldn't eat breakfast until a stranger had passed him by, and Abraham was able to offer him food and become hospitable to him. So that in and of itself was just a super powerful message. And what I loved about the Orthodox service was it offered me more of that structure. There was so much more of, don't do this and do this instead. You are a soldier of Christ. Outside the church is where the devil lurks. And it wasn't like in a fear-mongering way whatsoever, but it was more that rule book of how to live. You are a soldier of Christ. This is what you're called upon to do. The battle is out there. That is what my soul was yearning for. And again, these are such weird words to describe it. I really do understand that. But the things that I felt my soul needed and what my journey as a Christian needed, I felt like the Orthodox way gave it. It gave me that structure. Being a young man is hard. There's so many lost young men, and it's great to see a surge in Christianity and finding God. But I feel like that need for structure and rigour and discipline, the Orthodoxy way really just sort of seemed to tick a lot of that boxes. The study service that study session that I've just came off of was incredible. I found a load of notes, and again, it's just that involvement. There's a clear. I feel like there's a clear line between me going to the service and the priest and the father. So I understand that he is the teacher, and he is who I must show respect to. That I absolutely love. But just because there's that separation, I still feel a connection at the same time. It's like he's really in there with us, childlike in the sense of he's a teacher and I'm just a little boy at school. And again, to non-Christians, this sounds weird, but there is a lot of scripture that pushes us to be childlike, to receive the word of God, to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I just felt like when I was at that service and when I was on the session tonight, it's like I'm just a boy again. And because I'm a boy again, I've got so much more to learn. That's why I'm so excited. I just realised that now. When we're a child, we have so much to learn. We've got to learn to speak, we've got to learn to act, we've got to learn how to hold a knife and fork. Whereas when we're an adult, we get ego, we get pride. We think that we know everything. It's our way or no way. So now what I've essentially done, and what Orthodoxy has allowed me to do, is go back to the start. Now I'm childlike, now I'm relearning everything, which is another video that I've just filmed. It's essentially more about unlearning. So some really incredible stuff. There's definitely going to be more that I have to unpack. I mean, literally, I've got like pages and pages of notes, some special stuff, and I hope that you guys have at least understood where I'm trying to come from in this video.